Uh, so guys, the demonstration is about some of the very fundamental concepts of HTML and CSS. And primarily, we will be focusing on how we can control the HTML elements, right? Control means wherever we want to depict it on the browser window, we should be able to do that, right? That's the control. If I need to style a certain element in a different way, how do we go about it? And what are the best practices? There are different methods, right? So we'll learn about those methods and pros and cons about those methods. But before we move ahead and start typing things in the code, we should set up our VS Code slightly better way. So earlier what we were doing, we were just using it mostly as a text editor. Of course, there were some autocomplete features because it's an IDE, it's an integrated development environment. But remember yesterday I told you that the benefit of having an IDE is that you can extend its functionalities by including some plugins and also installing some extensions. So the plugins are called extensions in VS Code, and you can access the same by going to this icon here on the left hand side. Now what I'll show you the extensions I am using currently, but let me show you what this extension does. So earlier, to preview this code, the only method we had is to go back to the project folder and dig up that file and double click to open it in Chrome, correct? And every time I made some change, so for example, let's say I want to replace this first with second. So I'm gonna go and then change this here to second. And I have to save this file here, then go back and then refresh it to see the changes in action. Correct? Now this takes a lot of time, right? And honestly, maybe some layout level changes I would like to see it in the browser. But just changing the text, I don't want to switch back to the browser and refresh it again, right? And even if I want to switch to the browser, if automatically it could be refreshed, or as I make the changes, it should, happen in the browser itself, that would be wonderful. So for exactly the same purpose, we have a plugin. I already have it installed, the extension, uh, show preview. So if I click on this, it's gonna show me the preview right itself within the VS Code environment only. And I can zoom out by control minus and control plus, or control 0 doesn't work here, so don't try that. So control minus will zoom out, control plus will zoom in. Here we have limited control in terms of zooming in and zooming out. We can't do it here. If you click on this hamburger icon, then it gives you an option of opening it in browser. So the benefit of opening this in browser from here is that if you make the changes, it will not require you to refresh the page. Notice the URL, it is being served by the local host, right? Whenever you see 127.0.0.1 colon a port number, it could be 3000, 8000, 5000, or 3000 something. That means we are using the local host to serve this page. The concept of local host, I'll explain it later, but just overall, in a nutshell, if you want to understand what it is, then yesterday I talked about web hosts, the server, and there were two types. Either you could have web hosting or you could have cloud servers. So to mimic the web host functionality while we are testing our projects in the local system, we also have an option of local host, which acts similar to the server, and you can host your files there. So what this extension does is it converts this entire directory, the root directory, and then allows the local host to use this directory as if it is hosted on the local host. That is what this extension does. Forget about the complexities. Just think of it in this simple way, that this extension allows you to quickly preview your pages. And if I see, let's say that if I change this here back to first, it immediately changes it. I don't even have to reload the page or do anything else, right? Now, I don't find this setup much, helpful. So I rather would use this setup while coding. That's my go-to way of doing it. And if you have two screens, then wonderful. Otherwise, you can always use split screens. And here you don't have to make any. So let me see if I make a change here. Let's switch it back to second. And you can see that it automatically updates it here also. And I don't even have to save the file. But if you save it, I think there is a lag, a slight lag. Let's see. This works, yes. Okay. If I want to increase the size of the image, instead of 350, I want it 400. It became 4000, sorry. So I can increase it. I can have 450, 550. And in the real time, it changes. Saves us a lot of time, right? So this is something what you should apply. Now, how do we get this extension? You have to go to the extensions and then search for live preview. When you type live preview and wait for a while, you should get this option here. And I already have it installed. You may get live preview, live server, and a lot of options. I prefer to just go with the one which Microsoft has built for us, and it's free, right? So you can see the badge here, Microsoft. You can click on that and make a habit of reading whatever you are installing as a plugin or an extension. Just go through it, what it does. This extension is most useful for projects where a server is not already created, not for apps using React Angular. What it says, not for apps using React or Angular, correct? Because that would require you to have a node based environment, and node based environment requires a different kind of server setup, not the local host way of server setup. Okay, that also utilizes local host, but the server is created in a different way in the local computer. So for the kind of websites we are doing at the time, just based on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, this kind of live server is a must to have indeed. And you just have to click on install. You will have that option install. Click on that and it will get installed. And after you install it, you may have to refresh or restart the VS Code uh, if this option doesn't show up. Usually while installing, this will show up. Just try doing it. Anybody tried doing that? Working? Great. So that means it works. So you guys can try it later. And if it doesn't work out, please bring it to me. I'll help you with this. Now let's go on further and then start typing something in the code, right? Let me switch back to the setup I had. Um, okay. Let's try to style things. Now, let me collapse this so that we can just see the codes, and I'll zoom in a little bit. Now, I'll try to style things, okay? Uh, but before I do so, below the image, I'm gonna and see if you can't see, the text is getting truncated like this, then you can go to view and then choose word wrap. That's gonna wrap your code within the window. So I have this image tag here, and below that I'm going to have a h1 tag. So I'll type h1 and hit tab to have an h1 tag. And I'm gonna say styling exploration. Okay. Now understand this. Any HTML element. Now when I say element, you should not have any confusion in it, because everything what you see which has a tag can be called an HTML element. So this entire paragraph is an HTML element, and HTML elements can be nested. So within this paragraph tag, we have a B tag which is nested, and within that, not within that, but this is something which does not require content within it. So you don't have to open or close the break tag. This is also one of the elements. And I have created one single element, H1 element, and I'm gonna style it, right? So structure wise, things are appearing in the way they are created in HTML file, right? And style wise, I am supposed to, let's say that I want to color this. So how do I apply that color style? Elements can have styles applied to it. Okay. Elements can have styles applied to it. So you have to go inside the opening tag of any of the element and then type style and just hit tab. Don't hit enter. See what happens. A lot of time people have a tendency of hitting enter. Now in this case it worked fine, but in some cases where you want autocomplete to work, it will not. So don't hit enter, because this time you selected something from the drop down, it did work. You should ideally just type in style and then hit tab. Now this style has many attributes. The property style has many attributes, and that is what we see. So style has display, height, width, background color, border, color, margin, padding, position, top, font family, font size, and enormous list of properties which can be associated. There's an enormous list of attributes associated with the property style. Get it very clear in your head. Huh? Any element will have properties. So one element can have multiple properties. Style is one of the property, and the properties can have attributions. Okay? The properties can have attributions. So h1 is an element, and we have assigned a property style to it, and now I'm going to define a property for the style. Now for a particular property, I can assign more than one attributions also. So I can define the color and I can also define the background color. Okay? Now, with time, you will learn the difference between just the color and the background color, right? Padding, margin. Both add space, but how they work, with time you will learn. I'm gonna show you a few things here. So I'm gonna, first thing first, I'm gonna add a color. So just type in color and hit enter. No, hit tab. Always make a habit of hitting tab. Then it will give you a list of colors to choose from. If you don't like things here, pick any. For example, aqua. And now you can click on this or just hover on this, and you can use the color selector to choose any color of your choice. Absolutely no problem. Okay, so I'm gonna go with something like this. Okay, now very closely watch what is happening here. Everything stays within the opening tag. The opening tag starts here, ends here. and the closing tag has nothing in it. The closing tag is more like a full stop. We don't put anything inside the closing tag. Everything happens inside the opening tag. And in between the opening tag and the closing tag, we have the content which is being styled. Okay. So the first attribute is wrapped within semi quotations. So if I need another attribute, the color attribute, I have already applied to the property style for the element h1, and we can see it in effect also. What about if I need some background color also? That means a second attribute needs to be assigned, correct? So right after the semicolon is the declaration that the statement has ended. This property started here, this attribute started here and ended here. If I need another attribute, so I'm gonna hit space here and then start typing background color, and it will give me the background color. I'll just hit tab and then I have a choice. So I'll go for this one, and I see now it has a background color, right? Now I have on purpose included the background color. See, I see some people still not looking at the board. I don't know how they are getting this. And later if you come to me and ask कि sir मुझे समझ में नहीं आया, I'm not gonna help you. ठीक है? Because I have already told all of you to reorient yourself towards the display. What is it? Why do you not want to look at it? And do you get it what I'm saying? What's the problem? No, no, I'm asking those two people. You only, yes. You were looking at your system while I was showing this. What is the problem? Tell me yes or no. Huh? Is there a problem? Should I repeat anything? Then why are you looking at that side? See, don't try to mug up things. You'll forget. It's not so complicated. This is not something which after doing the demonstration, I'll ask you to submit the assignment. Unless you very clearly understand it, नहीं होएगा. ठीक है? So पूरा attention के साथ पहले देख लो क्या कर रहा हूं मैं. ध्यान से देख लो. मैं 2 बार रिपीट कर दूंगा. कोई बात नहीं. जब करने के लिए बोलूंगा तो करना, फिर पहले ध्यान से देखो एक एक चीज. अगर इतना लैपटॉप का मतलब होता है लैपटॉप लैप में रखा जा सकता है, घुमा लो, बीच में आ जाओ, यहां आ जाओ. So what happened here is that now this content has a color attribute applied to it and a background color applied to it. Now it may sound a little absurd, but all HTML elements, आप थोड़ी देर के बाद आइए प्लीज, ठीक है? So जो background color है, this can be applied to any element in HTML. Even if there is an image, it can have a background color applied to it. Okay? And it's a fundamental structure of HTML element. It can be applied to paragraphs, it can be applied to any h1 tags, it can be applied to divs, it can be applied to tables, it can be applied to any element. The background can be applied. Okay? Except the elements which does not require a closing tag, such as BR. Right? Now this does not require a closing tag. So that means it cannot hold content. If it cannot hold content, it cannot have a background color applied to it, right? So h1 tag is holding content, and that's why we see a background color, but it's not as we had expected, right? Why is it going beyond the text we have? And if I increase the size of this, I see that it's covering the entire width of the browser. Why so? Why is it so? So there comes a very crucial concept ah, that we must pay attention to. The HTML elements are by default block elements. The block elements does what? It has a nature that anything you create after a block element, it will push it to the next line. And we are very clearly observing this behavior throughout the code. The H1 automatically pushed it, the push the H2 to the next line. Even if I write it in this fashion, still you will see that the second line, which is H2, is pushed to the next line, right? Okay. Now this is a property which is by default. In fact, all elements, right? And all the properties have a default state. All elements has a default state. ठीक है, ध्यान से समझो. अगर मैंने सिर्फ स्टाइल यहाँ पे डाला है और स्टाइल के साथ कलर डाल दिया है, तो कलर का कोई डिफॉल्ट स्टेट नहीं होता, बिकॉज कलर हैज टू बी एक्सप्लिसिटली डिफाइंड. पर H1 जो है उसकी एक प्रॉपर्टी है जिसको बोलते हैं हम डिस्प्ले, और डिस्प्ले का डिफॉल्ट स्टेट क्या है? वो है ब्लॉक. करेक्ट. तो अगर मैं स्टाइल के साथ साथ एक दूसरा प्रॉपर्टी लेके आऊं यहाँ पे, हाँ, प्रॉपर्टी होगी या एट्रीब्यूट होगा? एट्रीब्यूट होगा, क्योंकि कलर जैसे एट्रीब्यूट है, बैकग्राउंड कलर एट्रीब्यूट है, वैसे ही स्टाइल का एक एट्रीब्यूट है डिस्प्ले. और जब डिस्प्ले टाइप करोगे तो वहां देखो ब्लॉक है, कंटेंट्स है, फ्लेक्स, फ्लेक्स बॉक्स, इनलाइन, इनलाइन ब्लॉक, सो मेनी ऑप्शंस यू गेट. And if you understand these options, you will be able to better lay out your elements on a page. So by default, it's block. I'm gonna change it to inline block. And the moment you do it, see that extra background got removed. Okay? Now the default property from block, I have changed it to inline block. Correct? It will still keep the elements inline, but act as block. Now what happens if this is inline block and I copy this line of code from here, Control C, and paste it here? It still behaves in the same way, right? Absolutely no problem. Now let's experiment with it. If I copy this, let me add here also style and display and inline block. Let's see what happens. Got it? Two elements, if we had changed their block to inline block, they are now appearing side by side. If I increase the size of the browser also, this element automatically got shifted up because it was inline block, right? And this was also inline block, it got pushed up, right? Look at this behavior. So if there is no space, it will flow down. If there is space, it will keep on sticking to the right hand side of it, because the inline property is no more clearing the top. It's pushing the content above and then making it inline, right? So if I remove inline, just keep it inline, and then try to see what happens. See what happened? Is there a difference? If I just go with inline, then the word can, the word will wrap. So the whole content is acting as if it is inline content. And the moment I added inline and block, it shifts it below, right? So similarly, you can explore other attributes also, right? But here, our purpose is not to go more in detail into this, but rather try to style it better. If I want to have some padding around the text, how do we do that? We add another attribute called padding, and let's add a padding of 10 pixels. Now see, that has some additional space around it. If I want it to have a border color, I can do that by simply typing border and then choosing border color, and I can choose, let's say, brown. But just by adding border color brown, it will not appear because we haven't defined the thickness of it. So I'm gonna add 1 pixel and also tell it that it's a solid color, but still it is not showing up. The reason is that it should be defined like this: 1 pixel, solid, and then brown. So this is how it's defined. You don't have to define border color separately. Now, since you have a border color now, you can assign border color as well and manipulate the color of it separately. You can make it thicker if you want, make it dashed if you want. You can also add border radius, let's say 10 pixel to make it slightly rounded. And you can add drop shadow. You can do many things with it basically. So this is what style looks like. Now, tell me something. If I want this H1 to also look exactly in the same way, because usually we want to keep the style uniform across the page, and not just across the page, but rather across the website as well. Correct? So in that case, what do? We copy this entire style and then paste it here, right? And the moment I paste it, it changes the styling to the top page as well. So I can reuse my code. But is it a good way of doing it? How many times I'll have to copy this code, right? So obviously not a good way of doing it. So what you have seen right now is called inline styling definition. I am defining the styles in the code itself, like inline, wherever in the element itself, right? There is a better way of doing it. So what I can do is go to the head, and right after the title, I can start a style tag. Okay, style tag, hit enter, and in between, paste the styles we had given. We have to format it slightly different. Let me just delete it first. And first, we need to find out the element which we want to style, right? So now we are not writing HTML codes. Within the style tag, we are writing CSS code. So we are going to type in H1, which is a reserved tag. CSS has classes and IDs. A reserved tag does not require to be defined as a class or ID. अभी हाँ, ठीक है, बहुत मम्बो जम्बो हो गया ना, परेशान मत होना, मैं बताऊंगा, ठीक है? क्लासेस और आईडीज का कॉन्सेप्ट मैं तुम्हें अच्छे से समझाऊंगा. अभी के लिए समझ लो कि मैं इनलाइन स्टाइलिंग को हटा के पूरे डॉक्यूमेंट में इन डॉक्यूमेंट कर रहा हूं. ठीक है, इन पेज कर सकते हो, इन डॉक्यूमेंट कर सकते हो. और H1 जो है एक रिजर्व टैग है, क्योंकि वो HTML के एलिमेंट को H1 को लोग मतलब CSS समझता है। जैसे P जो है एक रिजर्व टैग है, उसको हम अलग से क्लास डिफाइन करने की जरूरत नहीं है। अब इस केस में क्या है, मेरे सारे H1s जो इस पेज पे हैं उसको मैं स्टाइल करना चाहता हूँ। इट्स ऑलरेडी a रिजर्व टैग, so I'm gonna write H1 and open and close curly braces and then hit enter to make space where I can type in the attributes. So I'm gonna copy just the attributes, not the style tag. Copy the attributes, Control C, come here and paste it. Now the way I should format it is I should break all the attributes in multiple lines for better readability, so that I can very clearly see that the H1 has these attributes applied for style. The H1 tag, which is an HTML element, has following attributes applied for style. So all my H1s are going to use this. Now, if I come here and completely remove this style, ensuring I have only H1 opening and H1 closing, still it is going to be styled in the same way. Beautiful, isn't it? Right? So it reduces the redundancy in the code, makes it more manageable, readable, and reusable. It simply means that I don't have to worry about styling H1 anymore, and rather focus on just including the content. The styling will be taken care by the in-page styling which we have defined here for H1 tags. Okay. So next time I want another H1 somewhere. Let's say I need some paragraph here. So I'm gonna say P, hit enter, and I'll just copy some text somewhere. And below that I have H1, and I'm just randomly copying stuff, and I want the H1 here. No need to worry about the styling. It automatically is fetching the styling from here, right? And let's say that somebody suggested me that this border is too thick, change its thickness. In the earlier case, I had to make the changes in all the places I had applied the border. In this case, I just have to come here, and the 3 pixel solid can be turned to 1 pixel solid, and all the pages, all the places, it the changes is reflecting. Yeah, the change is reflecting. I can add some shadow also. So let's say, and uh, it's not called border shadow, but called box shadow. So box shadow, and let's say 10 pixel, 10 pixel, 5 pixel, and I'll go with gray. So this is a short and way of writing the code. The 10 pixel is the offset horizontal. Then another 10 pixel is Y offset, and then you have 5 pixel for the blur, and this is for the color. So I can choose a different color also. We can have a red color shadow as well. Don't do that, it looks horrible. And I can increase the blur amount further. I can change the offset value to 5, make it 0 if I want, and basically, play around with it as much as we want to get the right result. Here in this case, this is not looking nice, so I can remove it, and it gets removed from all the places at once. And I also want thickness back in the border of 3 pixels. So what we just learned is how we can apply style to a reserved HTML element, right? Now, you may want this H1 to be applied to just, that this styling to be applied to, let's say just one element. Okay? And rest of the H1 should appear in a different way. So how do we do that? CSS stands for cascading style sheets. So the style is cascaded. That means I can overwrite something by explicitly defining it and including it as a class or an ID. So before we do that, we must understand the concept of what a class is. We already know that. It's not so complicated. You guys are in a class. You all have your unique IDs. That's what it is. So basically, if I want to call the entire class of digital design to some place, let's say to the cafeteria for treating you guys with samosas, पॉसिबल है अगर अच्छा काम करो तो इनाम मिलेगा. So let's say I need to summon all you guys to the cafeteria. So what would I say? I would simply say the class of digital domain, please come to the cafeteria. And that includes all the people who belongs to this class, correct? Right? But let's say that a few of the people did really amazing work and we go outside for a nice dinner. So in that case, I'm not gonna call the entire class. What would I say? Following people with certain IDs, right? So because you guys have a unique identifier that is your name, I would probably not use an ID. I can use enrollment number, which is unique. So any unique identifier can be referred as IDs, and anything which encompasses multiple entities can be referred as class. So CSS styles can be applied to classes, IDs, or reserved classes. These are not IDs because H1 is in multiple places. So these are called reserved classes. H1, P, H2, H3, all of these are reserved classes. Span, okay, P tag or strong tag or I tag, italics tag. All these tags are called reserved classes. You apply one style to, one reserved class, and it will be true for the entire thing. Okay. Now there is a trick. If we use external CSS sheets, that means this is not passed on into the file itself, but rather externalized as a style sheet, and that style sheet is linked with this HTML file, then the same style sheet could be linked with n number of HTML files. So that means you define the H1 styling at one place and it will stay true for the entire website, no matter how many pages the website has. Even if it has 100 pages, it will work just fine. And if you need to pick up that style, you just have to do the change in one place, right? So that is how we use external style sheets. So I'm gonna show you that as well, how you do that. But for now, let's try separating these two by adding a class to it. Okay, so this will have all the H1s have these properties, right? But I want to just make a decision in terms of styling my pages that my first H1 will be styled in this fashion, but my second H1 or the third H1 in that page will have a different style. It will share most of the attributes, but let's say that I want the padding to be reduced from 10 pixel to 5 pixel. Okay, so I'll find those H1s and add a property, right? One property is style, one more property is called class. So I'm gonna assign it a property and we will call it, let's call it, give it any name, right? But give the classes a name which is understood by you, at least by you. Okay. So I'll say H1 custom. Okay. H1 custom. Now there are some nomenclature rules we need to follow. A class or ID cannot start with a numerical value, but you can add the numerical value later on. It cannot have spaces also in between. In some cases it works, but what it means, that I have assigned two classes to this element, right? So we should not forget that. Okay. So H1 custom is the class I have assigned to this, and I'm going to copy this and assign this class to this as well. Okay. And now I can go up, and after where I have finished styling the H1 tag, I can see how smart it is. It automatically pulled in dot H1 custom, but I'm gonna just escape and then prefer to type. ठीक है भाई, thank you so much. So it's a class. How do you define class in the CSS? By starting with a period. So you type in the period, right? And then I'm gonna type in the name. So H1 custom curly braces start, and and I am trying to override a certain property. So out of all those properties which are applied for all H1, I just want to focus on the padding property. Hey, just a second. I think we need to hit enter here also and here also. So I just want to focus on padding, and I want the value of the padding to be 5 pixels. Now notice, except this one, which do not have a custom class assigned to it, the padding for these two got reduced from 10 to 5. Clear? Is it visible? If not visible, then let me do something which is very visible. So I'm gonna go and then choose a horrible color for the background. Okay? I'll explain the classes. So I have put these two H1 tags in a class, and the class has more power over the reserved classes. The moment I defined a custom class, it has more power than the reserved class. So H1 is a reserved class, right? And we have defined some attributions for the styling for the H1, which is applicable for all H1. But then I hooked up two custom classes to couple of HTML elements, the H1 HTML elements, and I superseded that by defining couple of more properties. So the same property, see for these, first the code looks for the properties here, okay, and after that it will look for the properties here which are left. So for padding and background color, these properties are overlooked because it is fetching that property from a custom class which has seniority in terms of the hierarchy. Cascading style seat. The whole point is that the power is cascaded. Okay, got it? Okay, another thing I want you to see is that I can change, for example, I can also include a property here for it. Let's first, make it a little nicer. Yeah, this looks not so nice, but still manageable. Acha. So I can also define padding this way: 5 pixel, 5 pixel, 5 pixel, and 5 pixel. It's a short code. So now this gives me access of separately manipulating the padding. So how it starts, follow my cursor. The first 5 pixel defines the padding here, the second defines here, the third defines here, and the fourth defines here in the clockwise direction. So if I want to add padding to the left and right, which two values should I change? This one and this one. See, right? We added more. If you want to increase it more, let's say 15 pixel here and 15 pixel here. You can do that. Acha. Now I want to include a attribute which is not there in the H1. For example, the font. I don't want serif, I want sans serif. So I'm gonna simply type font and choose font family, and then I have these options to go with. And the way fonts work in a web page is different than the way it works in print. You don't choose a font, but rather you choose a system of fonts, which we also know as font family, and we set fallbacks. So the way it works is, for example, if I wish to choose a sans serif, so I'm going to choose Arial, Helvetica, and sans serif. So what it does is that the web page is supposed to be viewed by other people using other systems, computers, operating systems. So what it will do, it will first try to find out if Arial is installed in that or not. If Arial is not installed, then it will look for Helvetica. And if Arial and Helvetica both are not installed, then it will fall back to a sans serif family which is installed in that system. And most of the time, it does a very good work of finding out a system, a font which is closer to Arial and Helvetica, right? So this is the font family: Arial, Helvetica, sans serif. If these two are not found, we'll go to sans serif. However, in the modern days, the web pages utilizes not system fonts but rather web fonts, and I'll explain that later on. Google fonts पता है, जहां से डाउनलोड करके प्रिंट करते हो. सो वेब पेजेस में डाउनलोड करने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती, हम सिर्फ उस फॉन्ट को लिंक कर देते हैं. So we'll understand those things also in the second half. Is it okay till now? You understood whatever I taught, right? और बताऊं आगे या छोड़ दूं? इतना करना चाहते हो? देखो ये फाउंडेशन है. यहाँ पे ना डरना नहीं, घबराना नहीं है. अगर इतना कर लोगे इसका मतलब तुमने बहुत कुछ अचीव किया. If you can do this much, that puts you apart from a lot of people, you know, a lot of people, you know. ठीक है? So always think in that way. अब मैं नेक्स्ट तुम्हें क्या बताना चाहता था, मैं बताना चाहता था कि अगर मैंने फॉन्ट फैमिली डिसाइड की है, मैं फॉन्ट साइज भी मैनिपुलेट कर सकता हूं. Now it's just about trying out multiple properties. Now the font size works in a different way. In web, अब लार्ज, लार्जर, मीडियम, स्मॉल, स्मॉलर, ये रिलेटिव फॉन्ट साइजेस हैं. ठीक है? फिर आपके पास परसेंट आता है, फिर आपके पास पिक्सल आता है, एम आता है, रेम आता है, और ये सारे अलग अलग यूनिट्स हैं. देखो कितने सारे यूनिट्स हैं. ठीक है? मैं यहाँ पे सिंपली हमारा जो एक नोन सिस्टम है पिक्सल्स, हम उसके साथ जाते हैं, लेकिन वो गलत है. Never use pixels for the font sizes. Not a good choice. You should always use M's or Rems. Rems is more better than M's. Read about it on Google a little and you will understand. ठीक है. So मैं यहाँ पे सिर्फ लिख देता हूँ मान लो 24 पिक्सल. ठीक है. So beautifully styled. My these are also H1 but overridden by a custom class which is known as H1 custom. The name of the class itself tells us that I have defined some custom styling for the H1 and in spite these are H1, these stylings are applicable to it. Okay. Now the border is still shared by both. So if I make any changes to the border, you will see it will reflect in both. ठीक है? समझ में आ गई बात? Okay, I'm gonna say Control Z. The earlier border was looking much better. And then I can save the file. Don't forget to save the file. The live preview does not save your file. It just shows you a live preview of it. So this is what we have created. Okay. Externalizing the CSS, I'm gonna teach you later after we create a simple navigation, some hyperlinks basically, and a separate page. So let's quickly create one more page and you can do so by going here and clicking on this new file and let's call it about us dot html. Don't forget to type in the extension and here once again I'm gonna simply type html and tab after selecting html5. Let's acha, this is already word wrapped. No, it's not word wrapped. Yeah, and we can call the title about us. Okay, now let me save this and I'm gonna quickly type in H1, hit tab and write about us and below type P, hit tab and this is about us page. The information here tells what we do and what we are. Just anything I have typed. Now I can click on this to show the live preview and then click on this and open it in the browser. Let me close this one and this is how it looks. Now if first target is that I go to the index and below the h1 tag, no, or maybe here on top of this I create a hyperlink here which takes me to about us page. So I'm gonna quickly try to build a navigation uh, uh, let's say there is a tag which can have href property to it and that can point at a different page. So I'm going to type in a, hit tab and in the href simply type in about and it will fetch the page, hit enter and here I'm going to type about us. Okay, now a is by default, okay, this h1 is acting inline, right? This is acting inline. So let me go to the and this inline block display. Let me just remove this. I want, in fact, let me just keep all block elements. That fixes it up. So I have about us here and I can definitely style it in a different way. Absolutely no problem. But I want one more link which takes me to the home page And since they both are a tags, i can I can style that. So let me just quickly style. A is a reserve tag, no problem. And then uh, let's see. Okay, good. So I just accepted whatever it suggested me and styled it fairly nicely, not so bad. But I want the font size to be a little bigger. So I'm going to choose font size and go with larger. Okay, great. So if I hover on top, you will see that this styling is helping me get rid of the underline. That's happening because of the text decoration is set to none. The font weight is set to bold. And maybe the font family can be Arial, Helvetica, and Sans Serif. This looks nice. Okay, let me save this. And if I click on About Us now, it should take me to About Us page. But I noticed that the About Us is not styled in the same way the way my headings are styled here. Because my style is only specific to the index.html. So what do we do? How do we fix it? I want this style to remain present for all the pages I have in this project, right? I can do that very easily. But before I do so, let me just copy this small navigation we have built for ourselves and include that in About Us page as well above the heading. And that enables us to quickly go to About Us and then come back from About Us to Home. And when I do so, the home.html is not found. You know why? Because there is no such page in our directory. The home.html should be named index.html. You can type the word home, which leads you to do index.html. Let me do the same here as well. Save the file, save the file. And now if I go back, click on home, it takes me to the index.html. So my navigation, a very basic navigation works, right? Now we need to worry about how we can make the style consistent throughout, right? And after we do so, then we will style the h2 as well and the paragraph as well in one place, and it will reflect across all the pages I have in my project. It's very simple to do it. All we have to do is that we copy the entire style. In fact, we have to just exclude the style tag and copy these, just the attributes. Control C, create a new file, call it style.css, hit enter and paste all the attributes here. That's all you have to do. And after you have done it, go back to index. You can get rid of this entire thing. You don't require it. In fact, you can get rid of the style tag also. And at first it looks that we have ruined the entire effort we have made, but do not worry. All the codes are preserved here. Thus the styling is preserved here. We just have to go back to the index and type in link, hit tab, and it will automatically complete it. So link, you don't have to close this tag. It's a self-contained tag, and within which I have a property relation which tells us that this is a style sheet, and href which demands for the file. So I'm going to type in style.css and everything is fine. And the beautiful part is it's not just fine for index, but if I copy this line of code and simply paste it here below the style, it takes care of the styling on the about us page as well. So as simple as just copying and pasting a few line of code. Okay. And now if I need to change anything, for example, the P tag, I want to style it in a different way. So all I have to do is come here and type in P, it's a reserved class. So I want the font family to be Arial Helvetica Sans Serif, and you see the changes are happening right now, not just in this page, but also on the About Us page. That's the beautiful part. Okay. So any style which you will apply to the styling page, you define it here and it takes care of the entire website. So that's it, pretty much what I wanted to share. Now I think you can really explore more and you have some context, some, some clarity in terms of how things operate. I would want to see these things implemented before we go for the break, right? Which is 12:45. So you still have 1 hour to apply this. Okay. The good part, I have recorded the video of this demonstration. I'm going to share it with you right now. You can follow along and get this done. Okay. Any questions? No? सब समझ में आ गया? बहुत अच्छे. Thank you.